Welcome to all of you who just joined. We're just giving another minute or so to get a little bit more of quorum here, and then we will go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining the second day of our Designing Medical Drone Delivery Systems workshop. We're very happy to have all of you back today and looking forward to having a really active and lively day today with lots of small group work and taking what we learned yesterday and getting our hands dirty a little bit. So we'll just start with a quick welcome for everybody. And just to also start out, we do have the interpretation feature today, which is great. So how this is going to work is that every single person in the meeting, no matter if you would like to listen in French or in English, needs to right now go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, click this button for interpretation, and select either the English or the French channel. This will ensure that if anybody is speaking in French, that you will then hear the English interpretation of the French speaker. So even if all of the other speakers are speaking English, please everyone go in right now and click into the English or the French interpretation channel. So I will let Olivier come on. Yeah.
Ouais. Bon, bonsoir, bonjour tout le monde. La première chose à faire, c'est peu importe si vous avez besoin d'une interprétation ou pas, il faut dès maintenant aller cliquer sur l'icône interprétation qui se trouve en bas à droite, soit en bas à droite, soit au-dessus à droite, ça dépend quelle version vous avez. Et vous devez cliquer traduction française ou traduction anglaise, de telle manière à ce que lorsque donc vous choisissez un, ça vous permettra, lorsque un présenteur parle en anglais, vous entendrez, par exemple, si je clique en français, ça vous permettra, lorsque le présenteur parle en anglais, vous aurez la traduction française. Et lorsque le présenteur présente en français, vous resterez en français. Donc, dès maintenant, nous vous demandons de cliquer sur l'icône interprétation qui se trouve à droite, soit en bas ou en haut, et de choisir quelle traduction vous avez besoin. Donc, probablement, pour les personnes qui me comprennent, vous allez sélectionner la traduction française.
Thanks, Olivier. And one other reminder, if you would like to not hear the original speaker in the background, so if you're on the English channel, someone is speaking in French and you don't want to hear the French, you can choose the mute original audio, and that will mute the background noise for you. And the other reminder, and we will remind you all of this a little bit later, if you are speaking to the group, you need to come off the interpretation so that the interpreters can hear you. And we'll remind you of that if you raise your hand and come on to the main group. We can tell you to do that again.
Un deuxième détail, c'est lorsque vous avez choisi votre mode traduction, par exemple française, si vous ne voulez pas entendre le son original en anglais, vous pouvez sélectionner l'option de muter le son original, mute original audio. De telle manière, vous n'entendrez que le traducteur vous parler et vous n'aurez pas en arrière la version originale.
Great, thank you. And if you're having any issues, please just write a note in the chat and one of our tech facilitators can help you.
Hey, Gabo?
Yeah.
Oh, I should have asked that before. Which channel do you want me on?
You need to be on the off channel while you're speaking. Otherwise, you can go onto either one of the channels.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We are on day 2 of our workshop. Just a reminder that day 1 yesterday was a lot of our learning day. We gave you a lot of information. I'm sure it was a lot for one day, but today we'll be repeating a lot of that information as we actually work through one of the mock system design workshop together. And then just another reminder, and I'll also remind you at the end of the day today that the 3rd day of the workshop is optional, and it is not tomorrow, but it is on November 18th, so on Thursday. So I'll give you another reminder at the end of the meeting today, though. But for today, we're just going to do a quick welcome and a small recap of day 1. Then we're going to go into how you actually facilitate a system design workshop and how we take all of that information that we learned yesterday and how you put it to action in your country or your program. And then we're going to spend the vast majority of today working through a mock system design workshop in our small groups. Then we're going to take a short break and we'll come back for a discussion and we will close out from there. So similar to yesterday, we have a few things that we'd like to ask from you. Please give us your full attention, if possible, not going on to other meetings or leaving the room, especially when we're in our small group work. Please attend day 3 if you'd like, even though it's optional, but thank you everyone for coming back today. When we're in our small groups, if it's possible for you to turn on your video, please do so. We'd love to see you. Please stay muted unless you're called upon. You can use the raise hand feature and then we can ask you to come off mute. Please speak slowly for the dual interpretation today if you are speaking to the large group. And if you'd like to share your thoughts otherwise, please go ahead and use the chat feature. And again, the meeting will be recorded and it will be sent to you after the workshop and it'll be online on our UpDog website. The small groups will not be recorded though, just the main sessions. So let's just go a little bit over what we learned yesterday. So yesterday we learned a lot about the concept of system design and how to apply that in drone delivery systems. So system design is the blueprint for how the supply chain should run and how all of the components of the supply chain system fit together to improve health outcomes and supply chain performance. So we talked about system design with 3 components: the conceptualization component, the planning component, and the implementation component. So in the conceptualization component, we talked a lot about problem identification and root cause analysis. And I just want to go over this one again today because it's such an important aspect of this entire process and really is the building block of every other single thing you do during the system design process. So in this problem identification phase, you collect data and consult essential stakeholders, either through an assessment, or maybe that's a formal assessment or informal assessment, to understand the current supply chain challenges and the bottlenecks in the supply chain in that existing system. Then implementers or drone companies or governments or other stakeholders need to conduct a root cause analysis exercise of those identified problems to determine if those supply chain bottlenecks could effectively be addressed through a drone intervention. We talked about this a lot yesterday and included in the chat about when do you know that drones are the right intervention or not? And really doing this root cause analysis is the only way to do that. And not only do you need to determine if drones can be an effective solution, but you also need to determine if it's the absolute best fit for that problem. You need to interrogate alternative solutions as well to see if drones really are the best choice, or maybe other interventions are a better choice. You need to be looking for a problem with a solution rather than, or sorry, you need to be looking for a solution to the problem rather than trying to insert the drone solution into problems. And then we also went over the planning stage. And really one key concept that I'll focus on here, and that we'll do a lot later today as well, is around the site selection. So what makes a site suitable for drone delivery or not? And many different things go into this, as we saw yesterday, from the supply chain problems to the location, to obstacles, to infrastructure. But the key point here is that you also need to do an in-depth analysis and collect data at each of these sites so that you can determine if it is a good site or not. You also need to see what is the current supply chain performance, what's the cost of delivering to these sites, so that you can also interrogate them in a more in-depth manner. And we also had a really great discussion and some small group work around emergency planning yesterday, and all of the different considerations that need to go into what an emergency plan is and how you plan for that in advance. And finally, we went over the implementation phase. And we had some great conversations in the chat yesterday around community sensitization. And I want to go over this one because it's such an important thing to do right from the beginning, and it can really make or break your drone delivery implementations. And we talked a little bit about how you need to determine the specific local community structures that need to be engaged from the beginning, and how it's so specific to your context and to communities even, so that they can cascade that information related to drones down throughout the community. This makes it easier for communities to understand, to accept, and to start that two-way feedback loop with the implementing partner, so that they can have confidence in the service and that the service is directly addressing their needs. And another key note is to know that this is not a one-time activity, but rather a continuous process with engaging communities. So you can proactively tackle any issues that come up and address them in a timely manner. So that's a quick overview of some of our key takeaways from yesterday. And we're going to now spend most of today applying these key takeaways and understanding how we can put these concepts into practice through the system design process, and specifically through a system design workshop. So I will hand it over to Joni from here to get us started.
Hi, Gabo, thank you very much. Let me find my video. Okay. I can't see my own video, so I don't know if I'm aligned properly.
You're well aligned, Joni.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Totis. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. As we start into this part of our workshop today, we're going to be talking about system design workshops. There are so many decisions to be made in the process of setting up a drone delivery system, and many different people have different pieces of information that are needed. No one ever set up a drone delivery system all by themselves, because all the information that's needed to do that just sits with so many different people. And given that, one of the most efficient and inclusive ways of starting to work on the design of the drone system is through a workshop or series of workshops that brings together the different stakeholders and provides a structure to work together to make all those design decisions. I think there's a sort of a story for every decision that's made in the process of setting up a drone system. And some of those decisions you can start very well on your own or with a small group of people, but in order to kind of move through and make a final decision, it's often necessary to bring people together to do that. So the purpose of our virtual workshop this week is to explain the kinds of design decisions that need to be considered and model the process, although in a much more simplified way than you would do in real life. Yesterday, we learned about a lot of the different considerations that go into systems design, and today we'll have a chance to work in groups on making some of those decisions given a specific scenario. Let's look at some of those decisions. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So this list comes from an agenda of an actual system design workshop that Village Reach conducted. And we're kind of going to follow this set of questions as we go through our virtual workshop when we start in a few minutes. So deciding where to position the drone sites, where can you land and where will you base the drones? What assets, how many drones, and what infrastructure are needed? What products and other items will the drone carry? How will the drones fit in the existing system? Will they augment or will they replace other delivery modes? How frequently will drones fly and what will trigger flights? What are the operations protocols? So what will happen as the drone is being launched and in the air and landing? And what are the reporting protocols? So just as important, how will information flow through the air or other media? And finally, and very important, how will the communities around the drone operation be engaged and informed? So those are the types of things we're going to talk about today. But first, I wanted to also provide a little bit of orientation to a system design workshop facilitation. So just a few words about what makes a good workshop. And there's an example agenda. We had 3 days in Senegal in 2018 where we were really working with a group of stakeholders in a district where we were planning drone operations, and we had many people from the health facility. So we had laboratory people and we had nurses from the health post that we were going to be delivering to, and we had the medical director of the district hospital, and we had the fire. We had some people from the fire department and from the police, and we had the préfet, who is the sort of the administrative representative of the national government of Senegal. And we really brought people together and we wanted to work through some very specific protocols. So we were answering the questions about how will the drone be operated, or the system, how will the system work as the drone delivers? And so in order to do that, we really had to think carefully about how we wanted to make the best use of time of all these people, and how we were going to get through. I think we had 15 or so protocols to get through in 3 days. So it was really important to have a clear goal and objective when you want to bring people together for a workshop. And having the right people there is super important. Creating a thoughtful agenda and a facilitation plan to get through that agenda. So planning the right amount of time for each discussion, planning for language interpretation if that's needed. Planning how you're going to break into small groups so that you can work more efficiently and sort of split up the work to do it more efficiently over the time that you have. And then when you break up into small groups, of course, that means that you need multiple facilitators and they need to be well prepared. And finally, just coming with all the materials that you need for the activities that you plan. And also being able to capture and document the thoughts, ideas, and decisions that are coming out of the discussion is important. So those are just a few things that came to mind as we were thinking about facilitation of system design workshops that I wanted to share. And I think I'm passing back now for more detail about the actual scenario we're going to work through today. Thanks, Gabo.
Thank you. And yes, we will turn it over to Olivier from here. And Olivier, just a reminder to go back to the off channel. Thanks.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the reminder. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Next slide, please. So today, after going extensively on the earlier phase of the journey to a success operation framework that we introduced to you yesterday, where we talked about the need assessment, the feasibility assessment. We are now gonna be working on designing the actual network in order to optimize the supply chain of interest. We are going to make an assumption that based on the root cause of the problem you're trying to solve, the transportation issue that you have identified you're trying to solve, we have already identified the appropriate drone technology and have done a drone technology selection. And we will be sharing, there is already under the UAV for payload delivery working group, if you click on resources, there's a couple tools to help you with the process of selection of the drone service provider that is appropriate. So we're not going to enter in detail on that, but we will be sharing some resources, or everything is available on UpDoc. So just so you realize, this is where we are. We are in the steps now in the design and planning, supply chain optimization. Next slide. So I want to, the case study that we're going to use is a case study that is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and specifically in the equatorial province of the DR Congo. And let's imagine that the government of the DRC, the provincial government of Equateur has reached out to you. And because they are having some issue ensuring the availability of the L product. And you have done a need assessment and a feasibility assessment, like we mentioned, and you have identified the root cause of your problem. Before we go to the root cause of the problem, just some facts about the equatorial forest. Around 2.6 million people, huge area, over 100,000 kilometers square of surface, tropical climate, 4 to 6 hours without rain per day on average, okay? Relatively low wind, relatively flat, but a lot of tributaries. It's right around, the Congo River is actually going through that province, and there's a lot of little rivers, canal rivers and tributaries. And it's extremely remote with basically no connectivity when you leave the capital of Equateur province, which is Mandaka. And even within Mandaka, the network, the cellular network is very poor, very unstable. Next slide. And the health supply chain has 3 tiers. If you look at the flow of the product here on the left, you start with in Mandaka, the provincial warehouse. You will have for example, the provincial government, the head of the program, for example, EPI or PEV in French, who is responsible to bring the product to the district level, district hospital, where they're stored, but where also the product are going to the health facility level, but the health facility nurse or whoever you have at that level, at the health facility level, is responsible for coming and getting the product at the district zone level. This is pretty typical of the 3 tiers in Equator province for health products like health commodities. For the reverse logistics, for the transport of laboratory samples, it is all the responsibility of the health centers to bring it to the district level and the district level to bring it to the provincial laboratory. Also pretty typical. Next slide. The challenges with your supply chain because are the following. So those are, I want to remind everybody, this is what you have. This is data, information you have collected during your assessment, okay? So this is, we assume that you've done your assessment. You found out that poor road infrastructure, lots of the supply chain, the health supply chain required multimodal transport because of the poor road infrastructure, because of all the tributaries and so on. Often the transportation vehicles from the government are not functioning. Long distance, really, really long distance. Remember, you're covering 100,000 kilometers square, resulting in really time consuming to deliver from the Mandaka, the provincial level, to the district zone, to the health facility level, or vice versa, resulting with unpredictability of the deliveries and really high cost. 40% during your assessment, you also notice that about 40% of the health center do not have a functioning cold chain equipment. No connectivity, making the ordering process difficult and sometimes impossible. So relying on the forecast, the quantification that you've done once a year, and just having those delivery order that are based on theoretical data. And because of those low connectivity, the actual stock and the actual consumptions is usually not available each month or whatever frequency you are supposed to resupply, which results in low product availability, systematic stock out, low timeliness, low product integration, low supply chain responsiveness, high cost, mainly due to transport costs because of the long distance, the multimodality, and long disease diagnostic time, looking at the reverse logistics. So these are information data that you have collected, that we have collected during your assessment. Okay, you remember we've already collected all that information, and this is just a summary from your assessment. Next slide. And from those assessments in Equatorial Province, you have identified in 2 districts, Lolonga Mampoko in yellow, and in the district in blue, in the Bikoro district in blue here, which is zoom in this little quadrat, a few health centers which the health supply chain is literally breaking apart for all the conditions that we've mentioned. And you have here the distance from the provincial level, Mandaka, the provincial, the district hospital right here. So you have the district hospital right here, and you have the distances from, in straight line, from those district hospitals. You see 142 for Ngandu. And same thing here for the Bikoro district, or the Bikoro district hospital here. And you have all those different health centers that you have identified as extremely challenging, where the health supply chain is breaking down for all the reasons that we're mentioning. So that's what you have identified during your assessment. Next slide. So you also identified during your assessment that there is 4 products that you are going to prioritize. You remember yesterday we talked about the importance of integrating different type of product, because at the end of the day, your drone is agnostic to the product, and using the criteria that we mentioned yesterday, you are prioritizing 4 type of products into the for the transportation via drone: the immunization product, the tuberculosis associated medicines, emergency product, blood, oxytocin, and so on, and then reverse logistic, the laboratory samples. And as a result of your assessment, the feasibility assessment that you've done, you have already identified or selected the appropriate drone that you want to use to address and to define an optimization supply chain using the introduction of drone into your health supply chain. Again, this selection of the appropriate drone technology is a process on its own, and there is material to help you navigate that process and some tools to help you select the right drone service provider and drone technology in the UAV for payload delivery working group library, resource library. So we want, and there is also a workshop on its own, a webinar on its own. So the characteristics is, and so you have here in your chat, you have the resources. Thank you, Gabo. The resources to use to do the selection of your drone service provider. So for this case study, we have identified a VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing drone that require minimum infrastructure, we have identified that that specific drone can carry 5 kilo of load, of payload, around 6-liter volume, range of 100 kilometer round trip. Okay, so 51, maximum 50 one way, 50 back. And that will leave you with a margin of safety margin. So this is include the safety margin. Don't worry about the safety margin. Temperature control, able to maintain between 2 and 8 degrees. Connectivity, satellites, redundancy into the system. So there is a satellite tracking and control. So that solves the problem of connectivity. It's electric, 100 kilometer per hour, and the staff from the drone company are not required to unload product at the health facility and relaunch the drone for the return. The health worker had been trained, so they are able to do that. They've been trained for that. Okay. So these are the characteristics of the drone that you are going to be using. So those are the characteristics you're going to be taking into consideration to do your network design. Next slide, please.
All right, and that is over to me. Okay, I think is my video on now? Yes. So we are now going to take all of this information and we're going to split into some small groups, and we're going to work through this information and cover those 5 steps that Joni, or the 8 steps, sorry, that Joni told us about, that are the 8 questions that you need to answer at a system design workshop. And so how we're going to do this is that we're going to break out into 5 different groups. Each of your group will have a facilitator, and you're going to go onto a website called Miro. And Sierra can put the link to that Miro in the chat right now. But your facilitator will also be sharing their screen to this shared working space. But if you want to access this shared workspace yourself too, you can go ahead and click this link. You should be able to log in, and then you can scroll through to your specific group. So once you get onto this shared workspace, you'll see that there are 5 different blocks of colors here, and each one has your group number. When you get into your small groups, your facilitator will tell you which group you are, so you can scroll over to the specific block on the board. You can just use your mouse to do that, and you can right-click to pull yourself over to your group, or you can use 2 fingers on your laptop. And then once you're in your group, you're going to go through each of these steps together, and we'll have over an hour and a half to do this. So we're going to have lots of time to work through your groups. And you'll go through these steps and you'll actually make some of these decisions based on this case study that Olivier just presented, and based on all of the information that you already collected during your assessment phase. You can use your mouse to move some things around on this board to document your decisions. So for example, in step 1, you have these little icons that you can click on an icon and drag it over to the map that Olivier showed you. And there are sticky notes in the left-hand corner of each step in the bottom that you can drag one of those, move it around, and you can type anything on those sticky notes. So you can feel free to go in and do that yourself if you want to access that link to the Miro board, or you can use the chat feature and have your facilitator make some of those notes for you, and your facilitator can move stuff around on the board for you. So one reminder to the facilitators and to everybody when you break up into your groups, if you do use the chat feature, if you click the 2 button on the chat, You can select to only send your chat messages to your specific breakout group. And your facilitator can remind you how to do that when you join your groups. So like I mentioned, we'll have 1.5 hours to walk through the Miro over that. Then we'll have a short break at the end of that, and we'll come back all together and we'll do some discussion around some of the decisions that you made. So have one person from each of your groups selected to present, and you'll just do an overview of your network steps 1 through 4 and talk about 2 to 3 key factors that influenced how you designed your system. And we'll remind you at the end about what these discussion questions are. So here are the facilitation groups. So we've got our 5 groups here, and we can go ahead right now and have Rachel split us into the breakout groups. And just a reminder, when you get into your groups, please take yourself off of either of the facilitation channels. So I can go back here and just show you what to do there. So click the interpretation feature again and select off. So that way everybody in your group can hear you. Okay, Rachel, we will split everyone out from here, please. And we will see everybody back in an hour and a half.
Hello. Hello. Can anyone connect me to group 2? I was disconnected and brought back to the major session from breakout room. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Joanny. How did it go? Are you on mute?
It went well. Lots of stuff to go through.
Yeah. Super, super, super.
Really good conversation. So
Yeah. Yeah, we had a really good, good group, good participation and good discussion as well.
good.
Hi, everyone. Are we back in our main session?
We are.
I don't know about the other facilitators, but my group could use a lot more time. So maybe the other
Same.
same.
Yeah, we had great discussions, but we are really stuck on the step one, to be honest, because we really engaged in a very lengthy discussions. Because I think one of the big findings is that there is no linear decision making. You need to come backing at other like infrastructure considerations, and we really got some good feedback. But I think we are really far behind, to be honest. And I'm sorry about that also for the group, but didn't want to curb the discussions.
I'm in the exact same place. We only got to step 2. So Olivier, Joni, how about you? Are you guys still pretty far behind?
No, so it's really around giving them a flavor, giving the audience a flavor of the type of discussion, this type of reflection that needs to take place. So what we did, we actually covered prioritization of sites, prioritization of product. We discussed frequency and hour frequency and frequency and time for the delivery. We went through the exercise for protocol distribution, and we went through how to measure success. But again, we really I really wanted them to really understand the kind of discussion, the kind of data needed for those discussions, the kind of discussion and the kind of decision that comes out of those different area of discussion, just to give them a flavor. But we'll hear from them how they feel about it.
Yeah. So
we also moved just quickly through and got through all of the different questions, recognizing that we could have spent the whole time on the first one, but just wanting to touch the other aspects of planning. And so I'd say we went shallow, but went all the way across the breadth of stuff.
Okay, and Ashley, maybe in one minute you can summarize, and then we can go on a quick break here, and our facilitation team will circle back and decide what we want to do next, if we want to revisit or if we want to do our larger group discussion.
Sure. We have a lot of really valuable perspectives in this group, from the health system side to drone manufacturer to the actual pilots, supply chain folks. It's wonderful. So we also had a lot of really good generated discussion, and we weren't able to resolve all of those discussion points. What we tried to do was just then capture, we would need to talk more about this, we would need to ask these questions, and then tried to move on. We had just started step 5, so we didn't make it all the way through, but we did, at least get through the bulk of this is what you would discuss in order to choose sites and etc.
Okay, well, let's go with a 10-minute break for our participants. And then us as the facilitators, let's stay back and let's decide where we want to go next from here. So everybody else, feel free to take a 10-minute break. Let's just come back at 2:35 after the hour, wherever you are in the world. And then we will move on from there. So go ahead and have a nice little break, everyone. See you back in 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. We will come back from our break now. Looks like we had a lot of people still in the breakout rooms, and I think that you all will be coming back. So I'll just give it one more minute for everyone to get back to the main session. All right. So looks like we're gaining some more people here, which is great. We're almost back up to our full participant list. So let's go ahead and get started. So during the break, your facilitation team decided on a new direction for how we're going to go. We are going to continue, we are going to leave our breakout groups now and go on to just some group discussion for the last 40 minutes of our meeting today. But we will, at the end of this, we'll discuss for about 20 minutes. Oh, actually, we only have 20 minutes left. We'll discuss for a few minutes here, and then at the end of the day, we'll talk about what we're going to do tomorrow, and that you will have some potential options to be able to come back and revisit the Miro boards tomorrow if you were in part of the groups that didn't make it all the way through. Okay, so we're gonna just go ahead and move into the discussion. We aren't gonna do it by group. We're just gonna kind of leave it open. So please, if you are want to speak, go ahead and raise your hand, and you can come off the interpretation so that the interpreters can hear you and chime in. And we're gonna discuss these three questions. We just want to hear from you kind of what are your main reflections from the exercise? What were your thoughts? How did it go? What was interesting to you? What was difficult? What are one or two key factors that influenced your decision-making and your discussions about how you were going to design your networks? And then—
Gabo, we're not seeing your share, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Hold on just a minute. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. And then what obstacles did you face in your discussion or when you were making decisions? What were some of the sticking points that you came across that also were key factors that influenced that? So if you want to discuss, feel free to just go ahead and raise your hand, and I will call on you to unmute. And maybe we can start with one of our facilitators from one of the groups that we didn't hear from. Ashley, maybe you want to discuss just maybe one or two reflections from your group, and then maybe if anyone else from your group wants to come in.
I would love to hear more from my group, so I will prompt them to say that there were several points at which we found ourselves wanting additional information, knowing that realistically you would hopefully be able to visit each of these sites. You would need to speak to pharmacists, to the supply chain managers, to the health service delivery point workers, and you'd get a lot more information that way. I'm wondering if anyone in my group can weigh in on what are some of the things that we wished we had, that we were already presented with so much data, but we wish we had more. I'm gonna look through our participant list and see remind myself who is in my group.
Yeah, maybe I can jump shortly in. So one point was definitely that we would need more geographical data. So to see, okay, where is forest, for instance? So even if the distance on the map looks short, it might be difficult to get from A to B there, even if it's just an hour. I think that was one major point, and of course get more information about how the actual how to say it, handover, for instance, is working from. So not just knowing, okay, it goes from the province to the districts, but exactly, okay, how is it done? How can we get the medicine to our team who's operating? Yeah, I think these were 2 key points.
Thanks, yeah. I also think we had some interesting reflections from folks that knew specifically about how TV products are consumed or how another type of product is consumed, and really interesting perspectives on how we would go about prioritizing flights, not just based on stock out, but based on other bits of data. So I don't know if anyone wants to add to that or reflect on that. Definitely, please, because there were interesting insights, but it's really tempting to just say, okay, there are stockouts here, prioritize these, but there are other factors to consider as well.
I could come in. I think there was Derek who was talking a lot about this, but also just to say that, you know, some of these are quite disease specific when you're trying to look at stockouts. What is the demand? You might have a stock out for a day or two, but that's probably not something that you can rule out saying, okay, because the demand for that particular one has to be, is high and it has to be resupplied much more frequently than other products. And therefore it's important for us to look at some of these, which are quite specific to particular types of conditions. We also talked about the knowing how the whole supply chain system works as well, you know, the reporting, you know, whether it's a push or a pull system, who's requesting it and how frequently and all of that. That's the kind of information we thought would be important to make decisions on the flights and what needs to be supplied and at what quantities. And we also had questions about whether you can have 2 products at the same time as a part of the payload, and whether that has any implications, not just for the flight, but also for the product that's being carried and ultimately as well. So some of these were like the unknowns for us.
That's great. Thank you. And Dumi, I'll have you come off mute and can share your thoughts.
All right, thank you. I think for me, it was mainly looking at the importance of prioritization. And this is versus your personal feeling or maybe how you look at the situation, because there were other sites which were really in need in terms of they were far and maybe they could only be accessed by a boat. And that only shows that the communities there are in need of a solution. But then with the limited resources that you have as a drone company, where you can only go 100 kilometers and maybe you need to recharge as well. They don't have a generator or electricity. And then you get to see how do you prioritize between the resources you have and the community needs, so to say. And also that also got me to start to think, what else can drone providers or drone players do? Do we need then to start looking at investing in terms of maybe power? You know, when we are establishing drone delivery systems, do we need to invest to say maybe we also need to elect charging stations in the areas where we are operating, even maybe investing in cold chain in areas where they don't have, so just so that we can leash to those areas. And then there is a question of who pays for such things as well. So it was just some mixed feelings for me.
That's fantastic. I think my group had a lot of those same mixed feelings about, you know, there isn't a lot of infrastructure, but some of those places without the infrastructure are really the places that need it the most. And how could we figure out how to still prioritize them so that those communities could meet the needs? So very, very similar conversations. And it looks like we had 2 hands up. One of them might have just been lowered, but Booya, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Go ahead and come off mute, and then whoever previously had their hand up, if you want to come in again, feel free.
Thanks, Gabriella. Yes, you did pronounce it right. I was on the same group as Dumi, so I just wanted to add that, interestingly, just reflecting now, I think there were times when we had put ourselves in the position of the drone provider, thinking on that aspect and the technical aspects. And it would have been interesting had we assigned ourselves different roles as the different stakeholders, how differently we would have considered certain areas. I know we did talk about need, particularly as a key factor in influencing where we wanted to place these, where we wanted the drones to serve. So I think just thinking of it from that aspect, I think it was generally quite interesting. I did note down some points. I remember there was one comment, and again, this goes back to had we placed ourselves in these different roles about the lab samples and how potentially, if we have long turnaround times, how this disease could have already spread, and automatically we found ourselves prioritizing all the facilities potentially as good for drone delivery, given that outcome. So it was really interesting, but yeah, that was my addition. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. Really, really interesting discussion, that sounds like. Amani, go ahead and come off mute.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler en français, hein. J'espère que vous allez me comprendre. La première chose.
Amani, I might pause you for just one moment. Everybody who would like to listen in English, if you can go onto the interpretation channel and click English, then our interpreters can back translate from French to English. Sorry to interrupt you, Amani. Maybe just wait 10 seconds and then we can go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Ok, je peux y aller, voilà. Donc, merci beaucoup. En fait, il y a deux points importants que moi j'ai notés. Peut-être qu'il y a un troisième point que je vais ajouter. Alors, le premier point important, c'est qu'il y a beaucoup de parties prenantes. Dans ce projet, il y a beaucoup de parties prenantes. Donc, il va falloir avoir l'assentiment de toutes ces parties prenantes avant d'y aller. Alors, la deuxième chose, c'est que ce projet-là, on a besoin pour la conception de collecter beaucoup de données bien avant. Parce qu'en réalité, c'est ces données qui vont nous permettre de faire une bonne analyse et de pouvoir concevoir le projet de façon opérationnelle. Alors, la dernière chose dont je voulais parler, c'est que l'opportunité des drones nous donne un nouveau canal d'information. Je prends par exemple les zones de santé très éloignées où il n'y a pas de couverture réseau GSM ou Internet. On peut pouvoir, après livraison, recueillir un retour d'information par des données physiques, sur des fiches, sur des outils. Et ça peut nous permettre de communiquer régulièrement avec ces centres-là. Parce qu'on utilise les drones parce qu'on est censé apporter des services à des zones de santé vraiment éloignées, en difficulté et tout ça. Donc, voilà un peu ce que je voulais apporter comme élément dans notre discussion et ça a été très enrichissant. Merci. À vous.
Merci beaucoup, Amani. That is really interesting. I'll pause for a moment and let everybody make sure that everybody's on the right channel. You can just stay on the English channel for the participants who would like to listen in English. But yes, it's really interesting to see what other benefits that the drones could provide to some of these communities that are really additional services that are outside of your initial scope. So I'm really happy to hear that you all talked about that and brought that up in your discussion. We have about 4 minutes left. If anyone else would like to raise their hand and bring in a couple of last points. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe can I ask Nisit we had two, so Amani was in our group and I think Nisit wanted to jump in and express a few points from the discussion. Nisit, you want to jump in?
Oui, allô? Oui.
Oui, on vous entend.
Alors, à mon niveau, avant cet atelier, pour le choix de vol d'un établissement sanitaire par rapport au drone, j'étais limité à l'accessibilité. Mais avec les données collectées, je comprends qu'il faut un certain nombre d'analyses multicritères qui fait intervenir, que ce soit les questions de fond sur la chaîne d'approvisionnement, les populations, les communautés de la zone et toutes les autorités qui rentrent en ligne de compte. Et je vois que cela demande de la cohésion dans toute cette planification pour pouvoir aller continuer, répéter le même processus pour que ça puisse fonctionner. Merci.
Merci, Nessie.
Yes, merci beaucoup. It is very interesting that we're hearing now from two people. Just it's a great reminder to think of how much work really is needed in that conceptualization in the planning stage of your system design in order to get to that implementation stage and make these decisions and have these fruitful discussions. So it's a great, I'm very happy to hear that many of you notice that throughout this exercise. I think we have time for maybe one more comment from everybody before we close out for day 2. But there may be some more opportunities to discuss on our third day when we come back. So does anyone have one closing thought? Pasil, please go ahead.
Yes, so during the workshop, what was quite interesting is to hear from the many perspectives, depending on the areas of expertise those people had. So I think having that wide range of everyone, all stakeholders involved with their areas of expertise, I think it gives you a good insight. We had discussions, we had pharmacists, we had lab technicians, and all these will look at commodities and products differently if they are in emergency or when do they need to. So for somebody who's inclined in another area or is an expert in another area, may overlook some of these very important and intricate descriptions or properties of some of these commodities, which should be taken in consideration when designing these networks.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point, and really speaks to also that stakeholder mapping in the beginning of your conceptualization, and understanding who you need to involve in those discussions can have a really big effect on the outcome and how you design your network. So wonderful point. I'm so sorry to Raphael and Dr. Archimed. I do have to close out the discussion now because we have a little bit of follow-up around day 3 that we have to do before we end today. But if you have some thoughts, please go ahead and put them in the chat and we can try to address them on day 3 if you're coming back, but my apologies to you all. But thank you, everyone. This has been, I hope you all really enjoyed this exercise and to get a taste and that flavor of what this does look like when you are designing these systems and how complex and how much data it is. So we're really happy that you all got the chance to do that. And this is a great transition because on Thursday, on our final day of the workshop, we will have a lot more time to go through this again and to really apply this one more time. So attendance is optional, but it is recommended if you would like to keep talking about this and revisiting. What we're going to do on Thursday is very similar to what we did today. We're going to spend most of our time broken out into 3 groups that can go over some of these similar concepts. and then have some discussion at the end. And those three groups are going to be Pasil, who just spoke, is going to actually present a case study from UNICEF Namibia. That's a real live operation that they are in the planning process of right now. So we have some data from Namibia that will go through this case study again, utilizing this real data this time and having some real discussions on that. So that'll be really interesting. Option 2 for your breakout group is going to be revisiting and returning to these day 2 Miros for continued discussion based on our pretend case study. And maybe for some of the groups, my group and Taudis's group, who didn't get as far, this might be a good option for us to combine and continue together. And then option 3 is going to be, if you have a project that you're working on, you can actually bring that and have some one-on-one discussion and advice with our facilitation team to kind of walk through some of those steps and talk about some of the considerations that you need to make in your system as well too. So that'll be a really excellent opportunity for you to get some contact with our facilitation team. So what we're going to do right now in our last few minutes is that I'm going to post a poll, because in order to plan for these 3 groups for day 3, we need to know who is coming to day 3 and what group you would like to be in based on that. So Rachel, I'll have you launch the poll and I'll give everybody the last 2 minutes to go ahead and put your answers in here, please. Again, will you come on Thursday since it is optional? And then if you are coming on Thursday, which group would you like to be in? Okay, we have about 55% of people have, okay, we're getting up to 60% of people in the poll. So we can keep going until we have closer to 100%, because I want to make sure that we can count everybody in. Yeah, Derek, do you have a question? You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Gabo. I have a question because I think that someone can be interested to two topics to participate in 2 groups at the same time. In case of the group are going to do the work at the same time, is it possible for those who didn't participate to a group to have material from other groups? That is my question, because I'm more interested to participate on group 1 and group 3, but I choose group 2.
Yeah, yes, we will definitely share the materials from all of the groups with you when you're done. So you will be able to see those discussions from them. So great question. Yeah, Amani, go ahead. All right, we are just
Ah non,
about it.
désolé, excusez-moi, c'est une fausse manipulation. Désolé.
Go ahead.
Non, pas du tout. C'est une fausse manipulation. Désolé.
Okay, no problem. All right, so we're going to end our poll here. It looks like we have most of the participants. If you weren't able to choose a group for some reason, we will assign you tomorrow. So if you didn't get to do this poll, but you want to make sure you get into a group, feel free to just send us an email after the meeting today. But that is everything. So again, thank you all so much for joining our workshop. If you're not coming back on Thursday, we really appreciate the time that you spent with us so far in this wonderful, fruitful discussion. We hope this won't be the last time that we see all of you. we will have more events, more webinars for everyone through our UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group. So we hope to see you again. And we do have a survey that will be sent out via email afterwards with the recordings. And we just dropped the link in the chat. So if you would like to take our survey, if you're not coming back on Thursday, please feel free to do that. But thank you everyone so much. We look forward to seeing you in the future or seeing you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye.